Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, not to jump, but to finally see clearly. The wind howls around you, carrying whispers of every mistake you've ever made, the harsh word you never took back, the promise you broke, the love you took for granted. These are not just memories. They are alive, gnawing at you in the quiet hours, shaping every decision you make, though you barely notice. Guilt? It's not just an emotion. It's a silent architect, building invisible walls inside your mind, dictating what you allow yourself to want, to feel, to become. You tell yourself it's just regret, that it will fade. But what if it doesn't? What if, instead, it's the very thing keeping you from the life you were meant to live? Here's the paradox. Guilt feels like a moral compass, a necessary weight to keep you human. Yet, the more you listen to it, the more it distorts your sense of self. It doesn't just punish you for what you've done, it punishes you for what you might do. It whispers, you don't deserve happiness. You are, at your core, flawed beyond repair. And so, you shrink. You settle. You apologize for existing. But what if guilt isn't what you think it is? What if its power doesn't come from holding you accountable, but from something far darker, something hidden in the shadows of your psyche? Consider this, the most oppressive systems in history didn't just use force. They used guilt. Religions wielded it to control. Societies weaponized it to enforce conformity. Even now, in the quiet of your own mind, it's not just you judging you. It's the echoes of every voice that ever told you who you should be. So here's the great question. What if guilt isn't your conscience, but your prison? And more terrifying still, what if you hold the key? Guilt does not exist in a vacuum. It is a construct shaped by the collision of biology, culture, and the stories we tell ourselves. To understand its grip, we must trace its roots into the darkest soil of human consciousness. Carl Jung called guilt the shadow's whisper, the part of ourselves we exile because it contradicts who we wish we were. But in denying it, we give it power. It festers, mutates, and resurfaces as self-sabotage. Friedrich Nietzsche saw guilt as the triumph of societal morality over individual will. In On the Genealogy of Morals, he dissected how bad conscience was engineered, turning human aggression inward, creating a psyche that punishes itself more ruthlessly than any external judge. Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz, observed an unsettling truth: even in hell, guilt persists. Prisoners who had endured unimaginable suffering still carried the weight of survivors' guilt, the irrational conviction that their mere existence was a betrayal of those lost. This is guilt's cruelest deception. It thrives even when reason vanishes. Modern psychology reveals another layer. Guilt is neurologically addictive. The brain's anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that flares in physical pain, activates when we dwell on moral failures. We become trapped in a loop. The more we hurt, the more we believe we should hurt. Like a wound we can't stop pressing, we mistake the ache for absolution. But the deepest wound is philosophical. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that guilt arises from the terror of absolute freedom. If we are truly responsible for our choices, then every mistake is a mirror reflecting our own agency, and that is unbearable. So we create guilt as a scapegoat, a way to say, look how much I'm suffering. Surely that proves I'm not a monster. Yet in doing so, we surrender to a silent tyranny. Guilt becomes the cage we polish every day, convincing ourselves it's a throne. The question is no longer why guilt exists, but why we worship it. Guilt is not content to remain a feeling, it becomes a force, warping reality in ways we rarely perceive. It seeps into the foundations of our lives, shaping decisions that seem rational but are, in truth, acts of quiet self-annihilation. Consider the halo of restraint, the way guilt convinces us that suffering is noble. You deny yourself joy, telling yourself it's penance. You stay in relationships that drain you, careers that starve your spirit, patterns that keep you small, all because somewhere, buried deep, you believe you don't deserve liberation. The Catholic Church called this redemptive suffering. Modern therapy calls it self-sabotage. Both recognize the same truth: guilt thrives when we confuse punishment for justice. Cognitive biases conspire to deepen the trap. The negativity bias ensures guilt lingers longer than pride, etching failures into memory while triumphs fade. The just world fallacy whispers that if you're suffering, you must have earned it. And so, the mind constructs a narrative where pain is proof of morality, a perverse comfort in its own chains. Culturally, guilt is weaponized. Advertising preys on it: you're not enough by this. Politics manipulates it: you're either part of the solution or the problem. Even spirituality can distort it into endless atonement, where self-flagellation masquerades as enlightenment. The message is clear: you are perpetually in debt, to the past, to society, to some unattainable ideal of purity. But the most insidious consequence? Guilt steals the present to pay for the past. It fixates on what cannot be changed, paralyzing the will to shape what still can be. Like a man endlessly rebuilding a burned house instead of living in the one still standing, we mortgage our futures for crimes we've already served. The tragedy is not that we feel guilt, but that we let it write our stories. The moment you realize guilt is not your conscience but your captor, everything changes. This is the rebellion, not against morality, but against the tyranny of a mind that mistakes suffering for virtue. The first act of defiance? Question the sentence. When guilt whispers you deserve this pain, ask, who handed down this judgment? Trace its origins. You'll often find echoes of external voices. A parent's disapproval, a religion's dogma, society's shifting standards, masquerading as your own. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The second act is more radical. Replace guilt with responsibility. Responsibility is guilt's liberated twin. It acknowledges mistakes without fetishizing punishment. Viktor Frankl survived the camps by realizing that between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Guilt collapses that space. Responsibility reclaims it. Ask not how do I atone, but what do I build from here? History's freest minds mastered this alchemy. Nietzsche's amor fati, love of fate, transformed regret into fuel. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Buddhist psychology dissolves guilt through radical acceptance, not of the past, but of the present's power to redirect. Even modern trauma therapy focuses not on healing the past, but on disidentifying from it. The final breakthrough comes when you grasp guilt's ultimate lie, that you owe your suffering to anyone. As Sartre declared, freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Every moment spent self-flagellating is a theft from the life you still get to live. This is not absolution, it's emancipation. Here is the secret at the end of the labyrinth. Guilt was never about the past. It was always about control over your present, your future, your very identity. The most profound liberation comes when you realize to stop carrying guilt is not to erase what happened, but to finally choose what happens next. This is the paradox. By releasing the weight, you don't become less accountable. You become more capable. Consider the neurological miracle of neuroplasticity. The brain rewires itself based on what we focus on. Dwell on guilt and you strengthen neural pathways of self-punishment. Focus on responsibility and you build circuits of agency. The past doesn't change, but your power does. This is why every wisdom tradition, from Stoicism to Zen, converges on the same truth. Presence is the antidote. Guilt lives in the graveyard of what was, freedom lives in the forge of what is. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he was giving the same prescription as the Buddhist concept of non-attachment: stop fighting ghosts. Fight for now instead. The ultimate rebellion is this: to look at your guilt not with shame, but with curiosity. Why does this particular regret still hold me? What version of myself am I refusing to release? Often, you'll find the answer isn't about morality, it's about fear. Fear that without guilt, you'll repeat mistakes. Fear that you're unworthy of peace. Fear that to stop suffering is to stop caring. But here's the truth that will set you free. Guilt is not the price of love. Love does not demand suffering, it demands presence. So today, do the most subversive thing possible. Forgive yourself not because you've earned it, but because you exist. Not because the past deserves it, but because the future demands it. The cliff's edge was never the end, it was the first clear view of the horizon. Step back, turn around. The road ahead is yours.